Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast. In this episode, we discuss American Gods, Episode 8, also the season finale, entitled Come to Jesus. My name is Mothman, and I'm joined here by the pagan celebration to my Easter.
I was going to sit there. I was expecting you to call me your lucky rabbit's foot.
I'll be honest, I completely forgot about doing it and literally just came up with the first thing that came to my head.
I'll take the pagan Easter ritual.
Yeah, right? Yeah, pretty fancy. Still very colorful. So before we get into the content of the show, we greatly urge you to participate, fans and listeners, into our show to make it better, to make it more interesting. We're on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. So hit us up on any of those. Fan theories, feedback, recommendations, whatever. We want to hear from you. We also have a Patreon account as a way to support us because we are now, 210 or 15 episodes in. We're about to hit our year anniversary, so it's very exciting. But we're just doing it out of the kindness of our hearts and not making a dime. Yet we have operational costs. But I will get off my soapbox because we are going to get started with the news, in which I'm going to throw to Devin. What is up, man?
Have you ever heard of the website Box Office Mojo?
I have heard of that website. Mojo Jojo.
It's been a favorite website of mine for the longest time because what they do is they actually track box office numbers from theater sales. And not only do they do that, they also show it against their budget for the project. Now, granted, the budgets don't include advertising. But it's fun to sit there and kind of see which films end up doing really well and which ones end up just bombing hardcore. So I figured I'd run over the numbers from the weekend. And number one was, surprisingly, after the second one flopped pretty bad, was Cars 3. Made an opening weekend of $53 million. 75
for
worldwide.
cartoon cars.
It is. And considering most of their stuff has been just ported over from the previous two.
Their assets
not too
and
shabby.
everything. Yeah, no, not bad at all.
Yeah. Number two was one that I would have thought, with all the hype at this point, would have actually had more money to it. But Wonder Woman was number two. Ended up doing, I think, what was it? 42 million, but their total worldwide gross is 573 million. I haven't seen it yet.
I'm dying to see that movie. I actually wasn't going to see it at all, mainly because I was kind of giving up on DC movies, and it's got such acclaim. But the Boob Tube Buddies as a whole are having a hard time seeing it. I think Mike's the only one that's actually gotten around to watching it, so no one's seen it to actually be able to podcast about it. But I really do want to see it.
Number three is All Eyes on Me. Haven't even heard of that one.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Let's see here. What is it? Tupac movie.
Nice.
Made 26 million.
It's called Shakur Not Stirred. Yeah, I really don't know what it's called.
Number four was Mummy, and I, oddly enough, for a movie that I've heard nothing good about at all, it only did 57 total, but it's done so well overseas that they're in the clear. So this movie only cost 125 to make. They're at 300 million worldwide right now. So I guess I got the green light to keep going. But one of the things I figured to look back, Guardians of the Galaxy is still holding strong. That sucker's made 900 million worldwide. And on the opposite spectrum, King Arthur, it's only done 137, and it cost 175 to make. So yeah, big old bomb.
Yeah, I mean, Pirates is like, it just came out. It's Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's already done 150 million, which, I mean, production budget on that fucking movie though is 230 million. That's crazy.
Yep.
I wonder how much of that is just like Johnny Depp's salary at this point.
I'm sure it's pretty high.
Because he's like one of the highest paid actors right now.
Most of those films have been done internally by ILM, which is Lucasfilm's company. So you're always going to get the high-end, expensive visual effects. But I mean, it's made 651 worldwide, And it's not like they have to pump a whole bunch of money into advertising. It's kind of,
Yeah, it's like an established franchise. Yeah. Like Fox, I know, went and saw it and was like, it was fun, but it wasn't good. And I think that's what a lot of people, obviously they would love to go in and see a great, breathtaking movie, but just going in and getting more of the same when it's been years and like knowing you're going to have a fun setting with characters you enjoy. Like I get that. I have that with musicians a lot, like bands.
And it was very much from what even they were pitching it as, is they were pitching it as kind of like a rehashing of the first film. So when I watched the trailer and saw, this looks very similar to the first one, I was like, I'm good with it. I tend to think that, Gore Verbinski, that was his baby, and ever since it's left, it's been kind of, I don't know. I use the term filler a lot, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, a little bit. Cool. Well, I have one story that's a little bit crazy, and I will say it is from Fox News, so, take it with a grain of salt of the earth, hardworking men. But it's a woman like this, like the early 20-something, was out jogging and was attacked by a rabid raccoon, and she said it's like the Tasmanian devil. It was terrifying, and she was basically like dancing back and forth with it, trying to keep it away from her, and eventually it lunged on her and bit her and kept biting her. And this is like some epic like final scene of horror movie shit. She like struggles over to like some mucky mud and pushes its head under the water as it's biting her thumb, and just eventually drowns the raccoon and spares herself.
Oh my god.
Like, I read this story.
Insane.
I read this story and I'm like, Jesus, that's like a scene from Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Oh. I love raccoons, and I always go up and try to
I love
them.
I love raccoons too.
And my wife yells at me like, "What the hell are you doing, you dumbass?"
I know, right? So my friend Steve, who I've known forever, his sister, I guess, had a house that had tons of raccoons in the back, and I don't know if it was the prior owners or his sister herself, but someone had started a bad habit of feeding them. So he has pictures of literally like 15 raccoons just in the driveway with their hands out, like ready for food, as sweet as could be. You could get within like inches of them, and it's just the funniest thing because it's literally like all of them saying like, "Give me, give me."
My best friend growing up had a baby raccoon as a pet.
Oh man, sounds amazing.
And it was just, and then like they literally just, they found this baby walking around the woods and just picked it up and took it home.
I had this, if we didn't have, a dog, I would have maybe thought about keeping it, and like our dog passed away, but we knew we were going to get another. But long story short, we have possums in our backyard, and they were kind of burrowing under the sauna, so I put out a trap and we caught the cutest little baby possum that I then like just brought to the woods and released. But it was just like the cutest thing, seeing him scurry off, and I felt bad because like I don't know where his mom is, but he's a tough guy. He's in like woods right behind the city, so he'll survive. Do you have any other news stories? I lost track of where we were.
No, we're good to go. I think we wrap up the news.
Shit. That means it is time for Summon It Up in a Tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, summon it up, summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up, summon it up and up.
Tweet.
And we're back, and I'm gonna go first. Let's do that. Let's start on a weak foot. So
on a gimp leg.
Progressive show is just that, except when it runs over the bunnies. All talk of war, and now we finally see some lightning. Say my name.
Say my name, when no one is around you. Call me Odin finally. Why you playing games? All right. That
works so much better than what I was going for. I was going for Breaking Bad, but you top it.
Destiny's Child works better than anything. So there's, you know what I mean? That's just one of those. It's kind of like there's what would Jesus do, and there's like, can you tie it in Destiny's Child? 2 rules in life. All right, here is mine. I actually do like this one. I rhymed as well this time. All right, you ready for it?
Yep.
Dicks and titties flopping around, Mr. Nancy is back in town. Shadow finally starts to understand he's dealing with folks worshipped by man.
Oh, finally.
Right? And that was Summon It Up in a Tweet. All right, and we are back. So I don't know where you want to start with this episode, but like as I talked about in my tweet, we have had numerous conversations of frustration about Shadow not catching on, but Jesus, finally he did. They couldn't make it any more clear.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I think the way the episode opened made me laugh out loud because Nancy sits there and goes, too much. We're doing too much shit. We need to just take a breather and tell a story. And Wednesday goes, dude, I'm sick of the stories. Let's just move on. And I'm like, you're self-aware of this show.
Yeah. I mean, this is a show that is really cool visually, takes a lot of risks, plays with narratives. I have not watched the Hannibal show, but I've heard good things. I've also heard it's very like art house and experimental, and I think it's the same producer. I don't know off the top. It's either Brian Fuller or Brian Grazer, one of the two. So there's a lot of really cool positive aspects of the show, but we've continually complained about the pacing, how they tie in these stories. And I actually, as I watched this episode this morning, I was saying to myself, if they don't show the fucking sex goddess, I'm going to be so pissed because she's the only character that got 2 vignettes and hasn't been explained. And at least they delivered on that. But I did love that, like, one, just seeing Mr. Nancy again because he's fucking awesome and his outfits are dope. Right? Like, I could not pull that off, but that was an amazing outfit.
Nancy steals it. He steals it. And I just... I wish he would have been in there longer. Because, I mean, both he and Kristen Chenoweth were incredible. Yeah. And she's always kind of as cute as a button. And I think this episode ended up playing her really well because she went from being like, oh, I'm being this kind of typecast cutesy thing that she always does. And then turns around and becomes a kind of like, a Wiccan pagan, unleashed queen. It was great. She's
very like begrudgingly the darker aspect. She's very much like, without having the context of her character, she's very much settled into, her cute as a button typecasting, but just in general, like the colorfulness and fluffiness of what is the Easter holiday. But he kind of has to, I don't know, berate her and kind of peel down the layers to bring out like the, olden days pagan aspect of Ostera, the god of dawn, or whatever he called her.
Mm-hmm. I do got to say, Nancy's opening was great, but the show, this was the one where it was like, it felt a little preachy to me. And tell me what you think there. The rest of it's been a nice little kind of microscope on kind of culture. The Vulcan episode was a little kind of preachy, but this one especially was just kind of like, I just thought it was kind of funny that they were kind of in there, in your face, kind of female empowerment, which is good. But then they're playing that kind of progressive thing, but then instantly turn around and run over a bunch of bunnies.
Wait, where I honestly did not get any of the preachiness. Like, what were you feeling they were preaching to you about?
Well, it was kind of, this episode was very much man hates woman, and that's kind of what I got from the theme of what's the sex goddess's name? Bilquist. So Bilquist is this all-powerful, all-strong woman who reaches out and attracts the love from everyone.
Yeah.
And can be with anyone, can do anything. And she's a goddess, so she's a queen that was made into a goddess, but no matter what she could do at any given point in time, a regular, everyday man could come in and completely destroy her life. And it happened during in the Egypt times, then it happened in Tehran, and I just thought it was a little lame that she loses and gets stripped all of her power, and then kind of a douchebag of a guy ends up coming in and being the one to save her. So I get the narrative that they have there, but I was also kind of disappointed that they turn around and perpetuate the thing that they were trying to narrate with that. You know what I mean? Am I just looking into it too much? Am I too Trumpified at the moment?
Maybe. Yeah, no, I didn't get that at all. I mean, maybe in general, it was just the fact that I went into this origin of her based on the two scenes we've seen. And ultimately, the worship of her, which, you know, happens and culminates through sex, is what keeps her going. You know, so the fact that she falls for someone obviously could, you know, I mean, it's just natural that it would take her power away, not because it's a man, but because in general, that person will not let her, you know, consume them, right? So then she needs a pick-me-up because she needs worship. And maybe if that was, like, unique to the story, I would almost get a preachiness or, like, typical, like, man brings down the woman. But, she, you know, she had lesbian relations. I guess they could have just had a woman in one of these instances bring her down, and that would have maybe changed the dynamic. But because you're constantly just seeing all of these characters have that same complaint, like, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay modern? With Vulcan, it was becoming the voice of, you know, the gun fanatics and everything else. Because that's such a common dialogue throughout the show, like, it didn't have that, you know, weight to it. Because at the same time, to me, she seems like a very empowered character, like using her seduction and the fact that, you know, men and women do worship her. Like, that's how she kind of moves on. But at the same time, Chinowitz's character very much seemed like this strong character. And I could have read into it, maybe, like, of course, the man Jesus comes and puts her down. But at the same time, there's that dialogue with Gillian Anderson, and it's just like, no, the bargain is this: Christianity is the number one religion. We all basically have to saddle ourselves onto whatever denomination to even stay relevant.
Right.
So I guess there was if you could read too much into it, the episode and the series kind of provided an answer to where I just moved past it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it ends up with. Let's break down kind of what this episode really was. And I feel like, and I think I made this comparison last week when we were talking about what we would need out of this episode to get us into the next season. Yes. And if I recall correctly, I made a comparison that we were going to get in episode 3 of Star Wars, kind of a thing, where they were going to have to literally, you know, you're going to have to wrap it all up in the last half an hour of a movie. Everyone was suddenly going to start wearing, you know, Emperor-style clothing, and then suddenly Vader was going to pop out of nowhere. And I feel like that's kind of what we got. I feel like we had they went through the checklist of kind of everything we called out, and sure enough, it all kind of fell into place. And so to answer your question, I think, yes, you do get that kind of wrapped up bow, but at the same time, is it a satisfying enough bow? Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I might get the episode numbers wrong, but there was like episode 3 and 4, I think it was, that we really dug after the first 2 episodes were kind of spotty and not like driving the narrative. Or maybe it was 4 and 5. And then 5, I liked a decent amount, but I know you had your issues with it. This, to me, is also one of the stronger episodes because it continues to have interesting, thought-provoking dialogue. It continues to kind of cut. So this actually, to me, when you said preachy, my mind actually went to Odin's speech to her about her kind of, you know, being worthless and not being the god she once was, and kind of just falling in line with Jesus and the new religion. There's like those moments where he's kind of cutting and you're having this thought-provoking stuff, but at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, you're learning about Mad Sweeney, the Mad Sweeney, and what's her character, Laura Moon?
Yes.
Laura's storyline, where you realize, oh, she was intentionally killed by a god. Oh shit, that's Odin. And so much happens, and then to me, it was a very satisfying like start of a war and a natural conclusion, and it fit very well as a follow-up to, it was either episode 4 or 5 when we first really actually meet, is it Mr. World?
Yes.
So I don't know. For me, I was not overall pleased with the series. Still think it had a lot of missteps. Almost wish some Uber fan would just re-edit the whole thing,
Yes.
Using the same footage. But this episode overall, I really did like, and it did, like, I'm now, okay, I'm going to watch episode, or season 2 at this point.
Yeah. And it hit everything that we were talking about last week of needing. I am concerned that the basis of the new gods' fight is that we just kind of adapt and survive. I don't see that as being, show me the revolutionaries that won by just kind of toting the line. I think the ones that end up winning end up being the ones that bring the fight to them. So for me, it doesn't seem like this would start off on equal footing. But at the same time, it's done so in a way that, maybe we're not seeing all the new gods cards. So I agree with you entirely. I think the first season, if I was to kind of put my overall thoughts in it, I would say okay, but could have been great with proper editing. And
yeah.
It just really was so uneven. It wasn't even funny, and it led to an episode where they had to be like, oh shit, we got to get this all wrapped up because this is the last episode. We got to get everyone back next season. Mr. World, I think, is cool as shit.
For sure.
That it's kind of silly to sit there and think, okay, here's this guy in the background slowly tap dancing and doing a show tune dance, and somehow it's kind of scary, almost kind of building anticipation. But I don't get what was supposed to be conveyed. Was he there or was he not there? That's the thing I haven't quite figured out yet.
I think he just took over the face of one of those little dummies. Like, he has these henchmen that he almost seems to remotely control. Those are the ones that hanged Shadow and that Laura rescued him from. And I think he just kind of shows up in some form at the end. And he clearly is like a hologram type thing in some instances, just to kind of say his piece and say they're at war. You mentioned something about revolutionaries, and there's a quote I read from a writer I really like named Warren Ellis, which was, and I will butcher it, I'm going to paraphrase because it was like a whole paragraph, but essentially the sentiment was to win as a revolutionary means you become the establishment. Which is basically just saying that, a true revolutionary never really wins. What happens is they've won that one movement, they take over, and then society continues to need progression. Inevitably, that person kind of stays stuck in their ways, and another revolutionary is required. So the kind of concept of continual progress needed for any of these gods to stay relevant, it kind of ties into that. But as Mr. World said, it's, technology and guns versus swords and axes and stones. As far as this battle goes, but
or sword.
Yeah, or sword.
Where did he pull that sword from?
His asshole.
He just whips his sword out.
Did you not pay attention in the first episode? They explained that all god assholes are pocket dimensions. Right? Hey, on this note, we are going to throw to our last segment of I May Be Mistaken with Mike, the preacher, who's done a fantastic job diving into the actual mythology that they essentially take from for this series and the book that it's based on. So thank you again, Mike. Fantastic work. Here it is. We'll be right back.
Preacher don't preach.
And now, here's Mike.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of I May Be Mistaken. I can't believe I made it an entire season without really butchering that, but we're on the final episode of Season 1 of American Gods. And, this whole season I've tried to stick to, little minor characters rather than approaching the major gods. But after this episode, I just can't resist. I thought about doing Easter, but I'm not a Christian Chenoweth fan, so I'm just going to go ahead and do Odin this episode, right? And the reason I want to choose Odin is because some of the dialogue that they gave him for Ian McShane was actually yanked right out of the Prose Edda, which is where a lot of the stories of Norse mythology, there's the mythology I couldn't get out, are found. I mean, they're definitely older. There's more, Odin actually tends to be a more Germanic character than Scandinavian, but the Edda is a really great place, and they definitely tore that scene where he says his name. And let me go ahead and read you the version that's in the Edda, where he says his name, all his different names. He's like, I call myself Grim and Gangleri, Hergen, Hlamberry, Thek, Thrid, Thun, Un, Hel, Blindi, Har, San, Svipal, Santagal, Hertite, Hinkar, Bylig, Balig, Bolverk, Folnir. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and stop. But there's other ones. Sigfather, Allfather, Thror. I mean, so there's just a ton of all these names in there, and some of them you'll recognize and some you won't. And it's a big reason for that is because Odin is such a major mythological character. And like I said, he goes across a myriad of cultures, Germanic, Scandinavian, Icelandic, which I guess you could tie into Scandinavian. And even into the 19th century, he was still being worshipped in certain parts of the world. I mean, they might have been smaller cults, but, there was still a following for him, which is interesting given that, he's been chosen in American Gods to be one of the more powerful characters, and we all know how belief plays into the show. So maybe that is, kind of what Gaiman had in mind when he gave Thor so much power within the framework of the book, and of course, accordingly with the show. Another interesting thing he talked about when he was listing off his names is he named his ravens, Hugin and Munin. And they're, you see them all the time. We've seen them at least represented in the Thor movies, and they're almost just like inseparable parts of the character. And actually, they have interesting names. Like Hugin is like Old Norse for thought, and Munin is Old Norse for memory or mind. Excuse that. So they have these particular names, and Odin himself is known as a devourer of wisdom. That's his big thing, is he's always looking to gain more and more wisdom. Even that's the reason he lost his eye. And we saw that in the very first episode when the Vikings had landed and they were putting out their own eyes in worship of Odin. He actually lost his eye in the trying to gain wisdom from the Well of Erd, which is in the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil. So these are names that I'm hoping you're going to recognize from the movies, the Marvel movies. But that's where he lost his eye, gave his eye to be able to drink from that well. And even in the earlier episode where we see him in shadow in the glasses of mead, there's a story in the Edda about him basically stealing mead from dwarves and gaining the ability to write poetry and even greater wisdom. So that's a popular thing with him. But that's about all I got on Odin. I hope it was some interesting stuff. You can always go more in depth. There's just too much to talk about in the short little span of time I try and keep these things till. But it was fun this season. Hopefully I'll see you next season and enjoy the rest of the show. See you next time, buddy. Peace.
Preacher don't preach.
My husband and I both work full-time and have a toddler as well. I know what you're thinking, all the free time in the world, right? It's a miracle if we're eating by 9 p.m. I know. Buy the ingredients ahead of time, plan your meals, shop and prep on Sundays. Yeah, okay, in a perfect world. But for the beautifully flawed world I live in, Blue Apron swoops in and saves the day. I can now plan ahead and also save money by using blueapron.com. Visit www.blueapron.com/BTB and you can save $30 off your first order. That's www.blueapron.com/BTB. which in my language says free pedicure for the 1 hour free time you have in a week. The best decision and plan you can make this week is buddying up with blueapron.com. Thanks, little buddies.
And we are back. So we mentioned briefly earlier. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a moment to once again thank Mike, the Freylosopher, for kicking us throughout the season and doing these segments. So round of applause. Thank you, Mike. Okay. But the one thing we didn't really dive into, I mean, there's plenty of depth in here. I'm going to say two kind of things. One of them is you have the whole, like, kind of emo Jesus. Oddly enough, the person that played emo Jesus, we are also podcasting about Twin Peaks. And you remember last episode when Naomi Watts brings the money to the two, like, hoodlums?
Mm-hmm.
One of those hoodlums is the same actor that plays Jesus in this.
Ah.
The talking
the range.
Jesus, yeah, the range, right? I won't spoil anything else, but I thought that was interesting because I actually thought, like, was that Billy Crudup? Like, he looks kind of familiar. I don't know who it is. It's just some random dude that I've probably seen in small bit pieces. But okay, so Laura finally arrives. She's gonna be resurrected by, or relifed by Easter or Austere, but she can't resurrect someone that's been killed by a god. That is the plot twist. Somehow Mad Sweeney knows all about it. It was Mr. Wednesday. He wanted to take away everything that Shadow had so that he, I guess, through a coin toss in a bar, would kind of follow him. So, like, maybe just answer me this. In the book, does it explain why he would do that and why Shadow is so imperative and key?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah.
That's fine. It's fine. As long as we get something and it's not just like he wanted to ruin some shitbag's life instead of just finding someone whose life had just naturally been ruined and preying on them, like why intentionally kill people. So that'll be explained. What do you... And you've already... It's hard to ask you these questions, but being that this big event you were, hypothesizing about may not happen, what do you think the implications are going to be when Shadow finds out? Because it seems to me like Shadow is kind of like this all-powerful prayer machine, and he's going to give Easter and Odin power. So if if they lose favor with him, what happens then?
Well, that's the only thing that I feel like they've nailed with Shadow, and it took 8 episodes to get into it, is that the real reason Wednesday, so far on the surface, that he really can get power from him is that Shadow, granted it was portrayed horribly, Shadow is the lack of, and I've said this several times, he's kind of a blank slate. And this was the first episode where they kind of vocalized it and said, hey, I'm nothing, I don't have faith, I don't believe. And then he finally believed today, and that gave Wednesday the power to kind of, gain a little bit of an upper hand, is taking someone of no faith to actually getting them to believe on the spot. That helped kind of boost kind of the overarching, it'd be different if, say, you or I, if we had believed in something and suddenly went, oh shit, maybe it's not, maybe it's not Jesus, it's Odin who we should be, calling to. That's not going to have as much of a exponential power in this universe as, say, someone who literally is like, I'm seeing something in front of me and I'm just thinking this is just a bunch of bullshit, which has been nothing but Shadow's pretty much all of his dialogue.
The fact that Shadow has been so hesitant and so skeptical, even though he's seen crazy shit, the fact that he has finally come around means that losing him would be much more devastating than, say, like the 5-year-old that's reading a Norse mythology book and kind of thinks it's real. Gotcha.
Yeah. And I think that's how it translates.
Less potent.
Yeah. And I, there's some more secrets to Shadow, and I'm sure we'll see it next season. But that, I think, was one of the reasons that he finally suddenly turns around and then kind of had a smile with Laura, is that he's sitting there going, oh shit, maybe this isn't just some weird coma that I'm in. Yeah. I didn't get knifed in the prison, and then now I'm just in this medically induced coma to survive. This is real. I'm curious kind of the change that Laura's going through, simply because the whole idea between, okay, a god killed her, so she can't be brought back. Why is it that she suddenly believes Mad Sweeney's not a god? Why is it?
Didn't he tell her he's a leprechaun or no?
I mean, is that not a god? Are they not gods because simply they survive by being in belief? I mean, maybe that's...
Well, but my point is, maybe he is technically a god, but if I met a leprechaun, I would not consider him a god, because the lore I've been taught doesn't consider him a god, right? Like a goblin, a demon, a monster, a creature of the night, those are very separate from deities. So, you know what I mean? Like, he obviously has powers, but if she's just basing it on, like, the fact that, you know, St. Patrick's Day and Lucky Charms, like, I also would assume he's not a god.
I'm curious to see that explored a little bit, because, you know, whether or not Wednesday... I wonder if it boils down to a technical thing. So would that just be a death by proxy? Is what Mad Sweeney did with Laura? It's weird. So they're going to have to kind of describe that narrative to kind of sit there and break down what causes it. Because right now, all her power and the reason she's alive is based on Sweeney's coin, which I'm guessing is an extension of his powers as a god. That's the way I've always perceived it. But maybe I'm wrong.
Who knows? So, to wrap this up, what I would like to do more than anything for myself is let's tally up who's on which side of the war. So we have on Wednesday's side, we have Wednesday, Shadow, Austere, Chernabog, and then Mad Sweeney and Laura are question marks, and obviously once they talk to Shadow, he's a question mark. Is there anyone else that's like on his side that we've been introduced to or that they've talked about?
At this point in the book, then yeah, absolutely. That's the big event. Was kind of a bringing more people together to kind of get more in the wings.
Gotcha. So right now, though, like, that is everyone we've been introduced to. You know, and then there's, you know, the older lady that's in Chernabog's house and the woman on the roof. That there's obviously some powers at play. So they could be on the bench right now. And then on Mr. World's side, we obviously have Media, which is Gillian Anderson. We have Mr. World himself. We have I guess Mr. Nancy's on Wednesday's side, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So we got him too. But what you're seeing is, you know, the tech kid as well as part of it, and then he has been trying to recruit. What's her actual character name? The sex goddess.
Bilquis is what they're calling her. At least that's what they have her in on the Amazon thing.
Okay.
Then again, it's really cool. It's worth watching something on Amazon Video, because they do little side things where they'll sit there and show the character's name and the actor that plays him, plus they'll do little trivia. One of the things I thought was funny is this episode, I moved my mouse over to see the names of all the Jesuses. And then one of the name was Jesus Prime.
Well, Jesus Prime is the one that's talking, right?
Yeah, most of it. The one with the hail on his head was Jesus Prime.
Is that the one that's like talking in the pool, right?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and double check.
Yeah, and I think they gave him the cast name of Jesus Prime because otherwise, like, everyone else is Jesus 1, Jesus 2, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which I thought was funny too, because that's the dude I was talking about. I found him on IMDb as Jesus Prime, and it was that you know extra basically from Twin Peaks. Cool. Anything else before we close out this first season of American Gods?
I'm just curious. Although granted, we didn't talk about it simply because we were waiting for the final acts to drop, but now that you know that this is an Odin story, you were mentioning you were a big fan of that kind of mythology. Are you looking forward to kind of diving down that road and all the people connected to him?
Oh my God, absolutely. I love seeing him actually like take form and his lightning destroy some people. So if I can get some Thor and some Loki, as well as, like, I don't know, maybe a frost giant or two, maybe some Bifrost Bridge or Rainbow Bridge. Like, there's just so many crazy things in that mythology that I've always loved that not that they have to use every single character by any means, but just seeing those people thrown into the mix, even as just like periphery characters in a fight scene, like that to me would be a good time.
I'm a big fan of that mythology, and I've really, I don't know if you ever picked up on the show Vikings, but they do a really great job kind of breaking down the real person worship of that, and it's such an interesting thing just for the mythology alone.
I might have to check it out. I know my son's watched it and has enjoyed it.
It is good. Good show.
Cool. Anything else? Or should we call it?
Let's call it. 2 shows down.
Yeah, dude. We have done 2 shows together. We are also, for people that want some more Devin and Mothman chemistry, we're doing Twin Peaks together for certain episodes. So our first one was last week. We're doing one this week. But it's going to be a multi-host show. I mean, between Devin, Kristen, Julia, and potentially other people, it will have a lot of variety, as well as we have one of our longtime fans, Brookie Shy, who fucking loves Twin Peaks, super into it. He's on every show, providing some kind of out there spacey insight, which we absolutely love. So anyway, once again, be part of the conversation. Hit us up on all the social medias. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you might want us to cover next, all that good stuff. But that's about it. Want to tie a bow on this bitch?
See you next time, little buddies.
Peace. Nailed it.